Yes. Well, usually what we do, Gary, is we start our groups kind of in a popcorn style where we each share a little bit. However, now that you're here, Jay has been having some snarly physical issues that we were hoping that your presence can shed a little focus and light on, since we've been unable to unstick altogether. So does that seem like an okay plan?
Yeah, sure. The thing that, wait a minute. Could you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. The thing that usually happens when I appear with a group is people have questions for me and so on. So yeah, we can start off with Jay. Jay and I worked before a bit, and Jay, as I recall it, you had some noticeable improvements. Did they stay?
Yes, because when we talked together, I had what I call panic attacks. Then it went down, let us say, to simple fear. And eventually it was like just an uncomfortable feeling, or being concerned about things, but not really fear. But these last 2 days, it's again a kind of fear which is rising up again. And it is connected in particular with my heart condition, and in a lesser measure to my stomach condition.
I'm making
now, I'm trying to notice during the day what even the smallest events that can trigger a kind of fear. For instance, this morning, I have a walk each morning for my heart condition. And this morning I had to walk another direction from the usual because I had to buy something for a man whose birthday it was today. And the simple fact of having to walk in another direction, which I know pretty well because I live in the neighborhood where I was born. So I've known it for 70 years. That's no new place, that's no new nothing, but just the idea of changing my morning habit of walking that way and instead having to walk this way, it was a kind of fear. I know, Helen, you're laughing and I'm laughing as well because it's totally ridiculous, but this is the way I feel.
Well, actually, no, it's not ridiculous. I'm sorry. I interrupted you.
No, go
on. It may on the surface sound ridiculous, but to me, everything, all of our ailments, emotional, physical, et cetera, have a cause. Something causes them, okay? And so the only ridiculous thing is we can't find the cause, okay? But they have a cause, and the fact that, I mean, I don't know, as I sit here, I don't know the cause, but we can start exploring. So instead of going this way, you go this way, and now because you go this way, you have some kind of fear show up. Says there's something about going this way instead of that way that causes the fear. Okay, I mean, at least that's our first clue. Right? Yes,
I can also say that, for instance, as soon as I can feel my heartbeat going a bit faster, as I can feel my heart pounding a little, I'm in great worry. Somebody else would say, okay, I've been going up the stairs and my heart is pounding. No, to me, it's really worry. Although I've had an electrocardiogram which says my heart is okay. I do have some atherosclerosis in my aorta. I don't know the name in English, the main vessel that goes down from the heart, you know.
Well, by the way, everybody has that.
Yeah, I guess at our age, that's right.
Well, I don't know. I'm not a doctor, but it starts around age 15 or something, little bits. Okay. And it builds over time. And after a while, it just all shuts down and we go, you know.
I'm somewhat above age 15.
Yeah, well, I'm your senior too, dear. Okay. In fact, my doctors have told me I've had a heart attack. They told me years ago I had a heart attack. Although I've never had one symptom at all, ever.
Mm. No, what I believe also is that as soon as I start worrying, fearing, I have my diaphragm that contracts, and so I'm short of breath, and you know the usual stuff. But I just can't control it, and I can't find the reason for it.
Well, we may or may not find that here, but we have a clue or two so we can explore. Okay, so you go this way instead of that way. That's a clue. Okay, now you get the fear going on. Now, let me ask you this. When the fear starts showing up, does it go from what number do you get to on a 0 to 10 scale when the fear shows up, when you go that way? Or that way, whatever way, the new way.
Well, about having to go another way, it's maybe about the 4 or 5. But when my heart starts pounding or my stomach having problems, but it's more my heart, there is higher. It's maybe a 6 or a 7. Before this meeting started, I was really feeling short of breath and out of balance.
Okay. All right. Well, all right. Now, so something happens when you go this way instead of that way. Okay. All right. Now,
it's in a certain sense, it's the unknown, because since I had that heart issue, I had never walked that way. You see?
Okay. All right. Well, there's another clue. Now, I mean, you're saying things, and I just pick up. I don't know if you guys are picking up clues when she says things, because she just said, when I walk this way, it's the unknown. Even though it's known to you, it's not as known as your usual known.
Exactly.
Okay,
You've got it.
Okay. So there's some newness, some difference about there, some unknown, some, do I hear, perceived, whether it's accurate or not, but perceived anyway, danger.
Yes, the danger could be I couldn't manage to walk it all in fear, and maybe feel weak and not be able to come back home. That could be.
Well, logically speaking, that would be true if you walked your usual way as well.
Yes, of course.
Okay. All right. But see, that's the difference. You walk a different way, even though it's just walking, and even though you know the territory, somehow or other your system says, uh-oh, unknown, danger, illogical, yes. Okay.
Yes.
We don't criticize that. Listen. If everybody behaved according to logic, we would not need therapy.
That's
true.
Quite true. Yes.
It's very true. We get a bunch of stuff embedded when we're young, and we don't resolve it, and it kicks around. It's in our belief system someplace, and it just shows up. It's not to be criticized. We just observe it. That's just what happened. So we're doing that now. So we're not criticizing you, dear. We're kissing you out. Okay.
Thanks.
Always.
But let's move a second here for a minute. So something about the new direction is an unknown. There is no logically more danger this way than that way.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. So I have to guess now, which is what we do when we explore. Okay. I'm going to guess somewhere in childhood, somewhere way back in your past, there are unresolved events had to do with the unknown. Maybe you got surprised about something and something bad happened to you. Maybe you fell and that was a surprise to you. We have to start guessing and guessing and guessing. But where back there, if you can recall, would be an unknown, and there's a penalty or a
what comes to my mind, I don't know if it fits perfectly, but since it's coming to my mind, it might have some connection.
Oh, no kidding. Go ahead.
When my parents divided in order to get divorced, I was 11 at the time. So my father walked away from home. He went to live with his sister, and I stayed home with my mother. I'm a single child, so there were just the two of us.
Isn't it wonderful to be a single child, only child? I am too. I didn't have to share anybody's Christmas presents or any of that, okay? Spoiled terribly.
Yeah.
But let's talk about that for a minute. Okay, so there you are. You're 11 years old. Okay, so what do you know about anything at age 11? All right, your parents divorce, and I can only think if you're 11 years old, your parents divorced. There is some insecurity in there. There's something. This is bad. This is wrong. This is maybe, as some children do, you even perversely think you may have caused it.
Oh, no, I never thought that, because my mother had been teaching me ever since I was a little girl that if she had problems with her husband, it was because of her mother-in-law. And so when her mother-in-law, that is my grandmother, when she died, my mother was hoping that her couple would have better relationship, but this didn't happen. Okay. And so she asked for divorce. So I knew perfectly well I had nothing to do with the situation.
All right. That was just simply a guess. It's a worthwhile guess because many children do that. Okay. Mm-hmm. Also, I will say that even though you gave me a nice logical answer, and it may well be true. Yes. Sometimes there's even more kicking around in the background we're not even aware of in these things. So I always keep an open mind to that possibility anyway. Okay. All right. So, but we don't know. We're exploring. But what is it? What did that, let me see, how am I asked this question? What did that divorce mean to you about you?
About me? I have no idea. I know it was emotional to me because it meant every weekend I had to go to stay with my father, and during the school holidays I had to spend a few weeks living there, which is about, let us say, 2 kilometers away from here. It was not really far away, but it was another house, another family, another way of living, etc. And I was very too much close to my mother, dependent on her. And so even at age 11, having to leave her to stay, say, for a week with my father was very emotional to me. I remember I would cry, which I never did as a little girl. I never cried, but in those occasions I did.
All right. Do you, Jay, see a parallel? I see a parallel. Maybe I want to say, I don't know if you see a parallel. between being dependent on your mother, wanting to be where your mother is, and having, you used the word had to go, okay, to see your father, okay, where you don't have the same dependency, the same environment, the same
security, safety, yes.
Okay, same safety, familiarity, whatever you want to call that.
Uh-huh.
So between that and walking this way versus walking that way, your father lived 2 kilometers away. You knew the neighborhood well, but nonetheless, you had to go from here. Your words, from here to your father, holidays, weekends, and so forth. And you were so. I'm seeing a discomfort there. I'm seeing an unknown. Maybe fear is or is not the right word, but are we on target someplace?
Yes, certainly. The fact of there are too many things coming to my mind at the same time. First thing, I was thinking going this way, like this morning, is the way towards my ex-father's house. Of course, my father died now. It's no longer his house, but that the way I had to walk this morning was the same way I would have walked to go to his house.
Oh, well, isn't that interesting? Okay. Now, we don't know.
Sorry if I interrupt you. There's another thing that came to my mind. When I'm always worried about walking, etc., it's also a worry that something could happen to my heart. And in my father's family, many of them had heart issues. And ever since I was a little girl, I was told not to strain my heart, not to run too much, not to whatever, not to exercise too much, because it would be excessive for my heart. So now when I walk, after the event that happened to me some 3 weeks ago, my husband can tell you, the one you see, Tullio, on the screen is my husband, okay? He lives in Italy, but he's my husband. And the first day I walked about 100 meters and that was enough for me. I came back home and now I managed to walk 2 kilometers, but it was very slowly. I would never go from 100 meters to 2 kilometers because it would be panic to me. I have to go very slowly in order to protect my heart.
There's no fear in there, of course.
No.
But I want to get to something here. There's several things in there we can talk about. Okay, but the fear you're speaking of, would I be correct in saying it's an irrational fear?
Totally correct.
Okay. All right. Well, we need to recognize that. Okay. Now, I'm going to get to a logical thing for a moment. As I told you earlier, I was told by my doctors through some kind of physical exam I took years ago that I had a heart attack. They didn't even know when. Okay. I had one. Okay. Now, if I had the same belief about hearts that you were given, that is, don't do too much, don't work your heart too much, you're going to have a problem. My guess, maybe I would have a problem today, but what I did instead, because I had a different belief, and that is, you're not going to run off and immediately overdo it, but gradually build up. My doctor thinks what I have done is created my own bypass naturally. Okay. Because I do a lot of cardiovascular stuff. I climb hills. I do a lot. I'm 81 today or now. Okay. And I've been doing this for, I've been an athlete for a long time. Okay. But see, it's a different belief. That's what I'm pointing out. It's a different belief. And so you were given this belief, oh, they've got heart problems in your family. Oh, look out. You got to do it just this way, or you've got a big problem.
Mm-mm.
Okay. And that somehow I'm hearing translates to, you got to do it this way and not that way, or you've got a problem. You've got to walk this way and not that way. You've got a problem.
Mm-hmm.
How am I doing?
Yes, it makes sense, but it does not wake up some kind of, oh, yes, you're right, You are right, logically, you are totally right. And yet, but Teyi would tell you that I have a very strong guard at the gate. He's very powerful guy,
Well, yeah, and we all do. We all do. That's part of the belief in separation. We got to deal with this ego that wants to keep us in this belief and give us fears like you have, rational or otherwise, and so on. Okay. So again, Jay, we are exploring. Mm-hmm. And so what we did was we took some things that you were saying and we looked at it, explored a little bit, but we seem to be zeroing in on a possibility anyway. Yes?
Yes, maybe the thing about my parents' divorce was slightly emotional in me. Why the theory on how to keep a healthy heart going this way and not that way does not convey any emotion to me.
Well, okay. My intuition here, and that doesn't make it right, by the way. It doesn't make it right. But my nudging, if you will, from unseen therapists or whatever you want to call it, all right, suggested not so much the divorce, the divorce per se, right? Just the divorce. Mm-hmm. It's the doing something other than the familiar.
Yes.
Okay.
Certainly.
It's familiar to have mother and father in the same house. That's familiar. Now it's unfamiliar. It's familiar to be with mother. Going to your father, having to go to your father is unfamiliar. Okay. You must do it this way or you're going to have a heart problem is the familiar belief. Okay. And I'm seeing that translated into anything you do that's out of the familiar ends up with an irrational response. Oh, fear, heart beating, panic.
Yeah, it is true. I am quite linked, I would say, to customs, to the past, to old items. You can see behind me, you see those were my grandparents' items. That's my grandfather on the picture over there. So okay. I'm very linked to the past, yes.
Okay, all right, well.
Let us call it familiar, yes.
Well, okay, and we all prefer the familiar, okay, yeah, sure. But I'm hearing an excess response. I mean, it's one thing to do the unfamiliar and maybe be uncomfortable or, to some degree. Everybody, I think, would probably do that to some degree. Something that you're not familiar with, it's a little different. It's one thing to have some, let me call it, normal concern about doing something a little different. It's the unknown. How do we navigate this kind of thing? Mm-hmm. It's another thing to go over the top or have excess concern about it. I walk a different direction and my heart starts pounding and I feel a bunch of fear. That's excess to me.
Sure.
I saw Taya nod her head. Helen, are you nodding your head? Does that make sense to you, Tulio?
I'm not sure Tulio can understand you very well because his English is rather poor, so he rather listens to the replays.
All right. Well, then let me ask Helen. Is this making sense to you, or do you have another?
Lot of sense, because I think that Jay is somewhat trapped in a past that she needs to get free from. And
all right.
A woman.
Okay. So once again, Jay, we may or may not be on the bullseye of the target. Okay. But it seems like there's something there worthwhile addressing. It may or may not, resolve all of this stuff. Okay. Now, I have in mind bringing in unseen therapists, having a session with unseen therapists on this issue. What we seem to be missing, though, is a specific event. We don't actually have to have one.
I have a specific event, which I recall very well. That is the evening my father came back from work, found the letter from the lawyer saying my mother asked for divorce, and he went upstairs, collected some of his stuff and walked out and walked those 2 kilometers to his sister's house. And my mother was hoping maybe he would have asked for explanation, or they could have discussed, etc. But he did not. He did not say a word. He read the letter, walked upstairs, packed his things, and walked out of the house. That was it. And so my mother went in a crisis, I could say a nervous crisis, and she started crying and shouting, and I remember it jumping like a frog. She was so tense, she was no, and she was jumping like that. And of course, for a little girl, 11, being left with your mother, your father walks out of the house. Your mother is having a kind of a nervous breakdown, a crisis. She's shouting and crying and jumping. I had never seen her that way. My mother was a very quiet person, she was a teacher. She was very, and she completely lost any control. And that was very scary to me. So this is a specific event.
All right. The thing I was going to ask you about all of that, you answered for me at the very end of it, because it's not your mother's response to crying, the crisis of all of this, your father's response walking out. For all we know, he's saying, hooray, I'm free. Who knows, okay?
Who knows?
But he's got his response. Your mother has her response. We don't care about those responses. At least that's not a central issue. The central issue is your response. That's what's important, okay? And you said at the end, scary. I hear fear in that, okay?
Yes. When I'm telling you the story, I can feel my heart.
Good. Okay, now that's the next thing we want to know. Specific event. We need to know a 0 to 10. So as you were telling the story and the heart's going to all of that, give me an estimate as you recall this story. Say you're now. Yeah. See what we.
I would say it's a 9.
All right, and there's a heart beating in the chest.
It's uncomfortable. I can't say it's heart beating. It's all. It's not normal.
Okay, it's a heart thing.
Yeah, you got the right term.
Well, we get to be creative every once in a while, All right. Let me just back up 1 second. One thing you guys might notice here is one of the things I like to do when we're doing therapy of some kind or other, is I like to, whenever I can, inject humor. Humor can be therapeutic in and of itself. So I may make light of something, etc. It's humor also is a form of reframing things. See, it's not so serious. Okay, it's a form of reframing in a way. Okay, so I'm just pointing that out. And
I can tell you that laughing gives you a kind of contraction which loosens my heart.
Well,
yeah.
No kidding. Okay. All right. So now, this is what I'm hearing based on all we've talked about. Remember, walking this way instead of that way. Okay. Having a family, mother and a father, 11 years old. This trauma thing goes on. Your mother is crying in crisis. Your father walks out. Now what? Scary. I'm afraid. That's you. That's your response. Okay. A 9 when you think about it. Remember our sentence for specific events, the moment when, what happened, and I currently feel about it. Okay.
Yeah, what was most scary for me was being left alone with my mother in that particular condition.
Okay. All right. Which is an unknown to you.
Uh-huh.
Okay. We're back to unknown. Okay. It's a very unknown. You've never seen that before. The quiet teacher, all of a sudden, scary, unknown, heart thing. Okay. Again, we're exploring, but we seem to have something. At least we're on the target someplace. Maybe even the bullseye. Who knows? Okay.